All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Technology Learning Collaborative webinar series. This is our May event, the PHL Connected to ACP transition. We're going to be talking a lot about the Affordable Connectivity Program, which is the federal benefit for folks to subsidize and in some cases get free internet access at home. And the transition from the really successful Philadelphia program that OIT, the Office of Innovation and Technology, has overseen, PHLConnectED, getting K-12 families connected to the internet. That's going to be transitioning at the end of the school year to ACP, to the Affordable Connectivity Program. And we have two folks with us today who are going to be talking us through those changes, what it looks like on the ground, and some advice for organizations who are trying to connect folks that they work with to internet access. Ashley Pollard is the Digital Inclusion Manager at the Office of Innovation and Technology, and Cassandra Manotham is the Lead Digital Navigation Specialist at SEAMAAC. They're both going to be talking a little bit about what the sign-up process for ACP looks like, how folks are going from having connectivity through PHLConnectED to getting ACP, and I'll also be going over some national resources that are available for folks that want to learn more about ACP and how to sign folks up. So I think I'm going to just turn things over to Ashley, who will tell you a little bit more about OIT's work with PHLConnectED and the transition to the Affordable Connectivity Program.
Thanks, David. Hi, all. It's great to connect with you this morning. Afternoon. It's 1 o'clock. David introduced me, so I won't go into all the details, but I work for the city in OIT. And I'm excited to share this information with you all as we are really trying to support families during this transition. This transition does mean that there are going to be changes to folks' internet access. And so we'll talk about what those changes are. And ultimately, we want to really spread the word and share information about how you can support families with this upcoming change. As a little bit of history, PHLConnectED was launched during the pandemic. Some folks, really great folks, came together during the summer very quickly of 2020 to stand up and create PHLConnectED, this new program that was going to support families with free internet access so that they could do their remote learning during that first 2020-21 school year, fully remote. And so I want to acknowledge all of the partnerships that went into PHLConnectED. Some folks and organizations are represented here today. Thank you for joining. Our internet service providers, Comcast and T-Mobile, the school district, charter schools, independence mission schools, our digital navigator organizations, Cassandra and SEAMAAC represents one of them, and our philanthropic sponsors as well. And then finally, the United Way, who's our coordinating agent for the program. So multi-partnership effort, public and private partners that really came together to stand up this program. And so now, as we're shifting the program, we're really responding to, how the pandemic has shifted, how we're responding to new and additional funding sources and resources that are available, ultimately to sustain this work. We know that just because students are back in the classroom does not mean that digital access is not important to learning. A lot of homework still happens online. Family, teacher engagement may be happening online. And so we're really, this shift is really a pivot to support those needs in a different way that is leveraging new and different resources. So at the core of the program will still remain free and low-cost internet promotion and support for families. The biggest shift is that the program itself is no longer or will no longer be sponsoring that internet access, but instead will be supporting families in primarily enrolling in the Affordable Connectivity Program, which we'll talk much more about. And for families who aren't eligible for ACP or for whom ACP is posing a barrier, we will continue to support them with hotspots. This is going to be a very small percentage of folks, however, so we don't anticipate that being the large bulk of support that we're offering, but primarily support through PHLConnectED and the Affordable Connectivity Program. Our local education agency partnerships will continue to be, sort of our strong relationship to family communication. As I mentioned, we work with the school district, right now over 60 different charter schools, and the Independence Mission schools. We will continue to, deepen these partnerships to make sure that we're communicating information and ultimately supporting school-aged households in this program. The 211 hotline has been our entry point for families and will remain that entry point for families moving forward. And so if folks have questions about ACP, if they want to get screened for ACP, they can call the 211 hotline. They can also, this connects to this bottom block here on the slide, they can also schedule appointments with our digital navigators, and Cassandra can talk about that in a moment. But our digital navigators are providing in-person and remote support, not just for ACP, but supporting residents across Philadelphia with device access, with digital skills classes, and other online tasks. So all of these components are making up, the sort of new version of PHLConnectED. Now, what's critical for the changes and what families should be aware of is what happens to their service. So I mentioned that PHLConnectED previously has been sponsoring internet accounts through Comcast Internet Essentials as well as T-Mobile hotspots. And after July 31st, they will see a change in their service or their billing. The last day of PHLConnectED sponsored service is July 31st of this year, so in just a few months. If a family has Internet Essentials after this July 31st date, their account will remain active. They will still have internet service, but the account will transition to self-pay, meaning that they would be receiving bills for $9.95 per month after that. So that will maintain their internet access. They will still have access, but transition to self-pay. If folks have a hotspot, that hotspot will be turned off after July 31st. So unlike households with Internet Essentials, those with hotspots will have their service turned off. Now, ultimately, ACP can support families with continuing to receive free or low-cost internet, which is why we're here to talk about it and promote it and talk about what it means to make this transition. Very briefly, ACP is a up to $30 monthly subsidy that households can apply to their broadband service, their monthly broadband service. There is also a device discount that I will mention, although there are some challenges to implementation that potentially Cassandra can share, but there is a device component, credit component to ACP that would allow a household to purchase a laptop, desktop, tablet from participating providers if they contribute somewhere between $10 and $50 towards the device. So ACP is ultimately how we, want to continue to support families through this transition, and then after July 31st, support any new families that come to us with need for free or low-cost internet. Now, this is a breakdown of the eligibility criteria, and you'll notice that so many families across Philadelphia are eligible with this criteria. The first one, and the one I want to highlight for our school community here, is that any student who receives free or reduced lunch is eligible for ACP, and any student who attends a community eligibility provision school under the free and reduced lunch program is eligible, and in fact, any student. So that means that all school district of Philadelphia student households are eligible for ACP because all school district schools are designated as CEP schools. That means they meet a certain threshold of their student population participating in free and reduced lunch. So this is tremendous. This is a huge reach, especially for our school household sort of community. And we really want to lift that up and highlight that. I will also say that, we're working with the schools directly to send messaging and communicate this eligibility to households. But for this group here, it's really important that we, really make that clear. Outside of the school-aged households, other households, regardless of if you have a child or not, are eligible for ACP. So if their income is at or below 200% of the poverty line, which I think for a family of four is around 60,000, might be a little bit more than that, they're eligible. Or if they participate in a public benefit program like SNAP, Medicaid, WIC, they're eligible for ACP. If anybody in the household has received a Pell Grant in the last year, they're eligible. Or if they meet the eligibility criteria for a participating provider's existing low-cost program. So, for example, Internet Essentials has eligibility criteria that a household has to meet. If they meet that criteria, then they also are eligible for ACP. So broad eligibility across Philadelphia. And so part of what we're doing at the city is to not only promote ACP for school-aged households for the transition from PHLConnectED, but really promote it broadly because many households across Philadelphia are eligible. I mentioned 211 and want to highlight this here because it is this entry point for families. And so when you call 211, you can learn about ACP and if you're likely eligible. You can identify the key documents you'll need to submit your ACP application. And as I mentioned earlier, you can schedule an appointment with a digital navigator to get started on your ACP application, or if you have other enrollment needs or support, they're available too. I'll say that, previously 211 supported PHLConnectED families. It's really broadened and any household in Philadelphia can call 211 for ACP support, not just school-aged households. So of course, PHLConnectED families can call, but anybody who's interested in ACP can make the call as well. And so what I want to leave you with is some action steps for supporting folks with ACP getting started. We've partnered with Education Superhighway, which is a national nonprofit organization promoting internet access and adoption, especially for school-aged households. We have our eligibility screener that we've co-branded with them, getacp.org/PHL. I can add that in the chat in just a moment. It was created to be a mobile-friendly sort of screener. It is multilingual, translated in Spanish and Chinese, and can walk somebody through the basic questions, qualifying questions for ACP. This is a very quick and easy way for someone to get started, to learn a little bit more about the program. Then families can, of course, dial 211. We want that resource to be really pushed out there broadly. They can, as a reminder, get screened for ACP and schedule an appointment with a digital navigator. So if someone would prefer to be on the phone or does not have any sort of digital access, they can call 211 to get started. And then the other thing I want to share is that, we recognize that this transition means that there's some shifts to how we're supporting and who we can support. ACP is a federal program, whereas PHLConnectED was really built in Philadelphia, and we could sort of create and determine the different criteria, and we controlled how the program operated. We recognize that some of that is a little bit of that is lost with ACP being a federal program. But we want folks to know that there are multiple ways to apply, that though it is a federal program, they do not require a social security number to apply. You do not need to be a citizen to apply and receive the benefit. And so we're cognizant of that, and we have created a communications toolkit that reflects some of those eligibility criteria and ways to demonstrate eligibility. And then in those really small cases or instances where somebody isn't eligible, or again, that application is posing a barrier, we will still support with hotspots as well. So those are my key takeaways for you all. I will drop this link, although I did see something in the chat. So drop it in the chat if it's not already there. And then we'll also share the communications toolkit as a follow-up resource at the end of the webinar. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Ashley. I did want to ask a couple of questions that came up in the chat, since it's directly related to what you were talking about. One is a question about the eligibility letters and how they become available to school district families. Yep.
Great question. So we are working through schools with schools directly on creating those eligibility letters, because they have to be school specific or LEA specific. So the district sent out letters, it's posted on their webpage as well, but they've sent those out to families because everybody in the district qualifies. So everybody did receive a letter. And then with charter schools, I'm working on a one-on-one basis because for some schools, maybe they have that CEP eligibility, maybe they don't, and they just need individual free and reduced lunch letters for individual students. So it's sort of on a case-by-case basis, but if folks need that support, or you're working at a school and you have questions about that, let me know, reach out to me, and I can work with you to build that letter. Great. I will also say, I will say that though the letter offers a sort of blanket eligibility, for example, in the case of the district, we know that every student is eligible regardless of their income because they attend a school district school. That's great for messaging. It's something that could be sent out pretty easily. But I will say, and Cassandra will probably touch on this too, this eligibility letter or uploading documents to demonstrate eligibility is not always the easiest or fastest way to qualify for ACP. So the letter is great and we can support you, but we also want folks to be aware that it's not always going to be the fastest way to demonstrate eligibility.
Thank you. And we'll have a lot of time for Q&A afterwards. I know there's probably going to be some specific questions that come up, which you'll be able to share during the Q&A. That was a good transition point for Cassandra, though, to share a little bit about your on-the-ground experiences signing folks up for ACP and going through some of the processes that you've developed, which have been really amazing. So I can't wait to share some of your resources.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here today. So my name is Cassandra. I'm a digital navigator at SEAMAAC, which is based in South Philly. And I'm going to be sharing my experience on the ground with ACP enrollments. And I've been doing this for about 2 years now, when it was the Emergency Broadband Benefit, EBB. So I hope that what I say will be helpful to you guys today. So some background about SEAMAAC. We're a nonprofit based in South Philly, and we serve immigrants and refugees specifically, but we also help other people in the Philadelphia community. So one of the things that we focus on at SEAMAAC is language access and collaborating with key community members. So SEAMAAC is a social services agency. So as a digital navigator, I work really closely with case managers, community workers, and bilingual counseling assistants. So I have connections to people in schools, case managers, and other CBOs. And I wanted to highlight that because I think that's why our ACP enrollment assistance is so strong. So moving on a little bit, we are SEAMAAC, as I mentioned, but there are other digital navigator orgs in Philadelphia. So there's Beyond Literacy and Drexel, and I wanted to share these contact information just so that you have it. This is also on the city website, but if you want to refer anyone for ACP assistance, feel free to contact the one that makes sense for you or the community member who needs help. So as Ashley mentioned, more information on the ACP program. It's a $30 benefit off of their internet or data service. And to highlight who's eligible again, anyone who receives public benefits like SNAP, Medicaid, or WIC are eligible. Anyone in the school district of Philadelphia who receive free and reduced lunch. or a charter school who's a CEP school. Anyone who receives Pell Grants, so these are college students, you do have to be over 18 to use ACP, however. But if you're like 19, you could use ACP. And I also included people who are 200% at or below the federal poverty guidelines. So this may be someone, an adult who doesn't have a child in the school district, so they wouldn't qualify through their child, and they also don't have public benefits. But if they're 200% at or below the federal poverty guidelines, they could submit their pay stubs and see if they're eligible for ACP to use this $30 discount off of their internet service. And I wanted to include a visual below here, specifically about the transition from PHLConnectED to Internet Essentials to ACP. So currently, families have PHLConnectED for $0. However, as Ashley mentioned, July 31st, that will be ending, and then families will be responsible for the bill, which is $9.95. However, if they want to maintain the free service, they can apply for ACP to make it free again. And I think this visual is helpful for a lot of families that I give this presentation to. Some families will say, I have the $9.95 internet. Can I get ACP? Yes, they can. That just means that they didn't have PHLConnectED in the beginning. But as long as they're eligible for ACP, they could use it on their internet service. Okay, so I will talk very briefly about the ACP process. I have a Loom video that's 20 minutes long that I recorded. We'll send a link after this webinar, but I just wanted to talk briefly about the steps you can expect when you're helping someone sign up or helping yourself sign up. So there are 3 main steps at a glance. So the first step is the preparation step. You want to gather all your documents to apply for ACP. You don't need to submit these documents. However, you may be asked. So I think in March, the ACP process was revamped to be simplified. So in the beginning, they ask you for your social security number, even though that's not required. However, in Pennsylvania, I think there's data sharing between the public benefits and ACP eligibility. So if you give them your social security number, you may not have to upload your eligibility letter later. And that just makes the process a lot easier. You could get qualified within like 5 minutes. And that's if you have a social security number. But if you don't have one, that's okay. So in the context of school, the PHLConnectED transition, there are 3 documents you need mainly. It would be the government ID of the account holder for the internet service, the government ID of one student, and an eligibility letter from the school. And this here, as Ashley mentioned, the letters don't always get approved, even though it has everything you need, like the letterhead from the school, the name of the student, the address, the school name. Sometimes it's the website is complicated, but I've had to help people, submit the documents 3 times and then the same document would be approved. So if you get frustrated because a document's not getting accepted, just keep trying with the same document. That helps. If families do get approved after the 3rd try for some reason. So that's the first step. You want to gather all your documents. Step 2 is important. You want to submit information to affordableconnectivity.gov to get approved for ACP. And approved is underlined because there are two steps to this. First, you get approved, and then you need to utilize it. Some people don't know that after they're approved, they have to contact their internet service provider to apply the approved application ID number. And because they don't call the internet service provider to apply the approved application ID number, they're never utilizing ACP, and then they have a bill that they weren't expecting. And as I mentioned, you can watch this long video here if you want to go through all the steps. But when in doubt, everything must match, including the name that you type in onto the Affordable Connectivity website, the spelling, abbreviations, emails, everything has to match. And finally, in step 3, you're finally approved, and now you can utilize the ACP credit. So you can just call the internet service provider if they have an ACP department, which Xfinity does, Comcast does. Or you could call, if you're a Verizon customer, their general customer service line, and I've included those numbers at the end. This step, no one really talks about. How do you maintain ACP once you have it on your internet? And I like to tell people this information because sometimes it could take quite a while to get the ACP approved on their account. And then suddenly it's removed and they don't know why. So to go over how to maintain your ACP, as a reminder, you can only have one ACP benefit per household, not per person. So even if 2 people in the household are qualified for public benefits or there's 2 children in the school, you can't combine the benefits to get 60 or whatever. It's only $30 off of your internet service. And the second one is important. Your household can use ACP for phone or internet service, but not both. And this gets people in sticky situations because they will have ACP on their internet service, but one day they're walking down the street and there are people tabling outside with tablets or phones, and they say, hey, get this free device. It's free. But they don't know that it's free through ACP. It's using the ACP credit. And because you can only use ACP for one service, not 2, and per household, not per person, it will be removed from your internet service, and then you'll be responsible for the bill. And of course, the person giving the phone or tablet doesn't tell you that. So you're kind of unaware of what's going on, and then all of a sudden your internet service is disconnected if you don't check your email. They will probably email you that you've been de-enrolled from ACP. But if someone doesn't check their email and suddenly they don't have internet service, but they received a free phone like 2 months ago, then it's because of the phone that they no longer have ACP on their internet. 3 and 4 are pretty self-explanatory. If you move, you'll have to reapply for ACP, and that process is really easy. It's the same as applying the first time, except with your new address. And after a year, you'll have to renew your ACP eligibility. And I believe the internet service provider will contact you about renewing, and it's the same as signing up the first time as well. And number 5 just highlights the second point, which is be careful accepting free devices from unknown third parties. You know, sometimes the school district will have laptops because it's their own inventory. It's not using ACP most of the time. I don't think so. But if you ever want to be sure, if you or your client or a community member is walking outside and they're offered a free device, they could just ask, is this using ACP? And if it is, they could walk away and say that they already have the service. So yes, if you're ever helping someone sign up for ACP, you should let them know how to maintain it, because getting it is hard in the first place. It could be a challenge, especially going through the national verifier. Okay, I think this is the last part, how you can facilitate the ACP adoption process. So the first thing is building trust with whoever you're helping sign up for this. And how I've done it at SEAMAAC is, you know, I am connected to their case manager, so their case managers are able to pull up the program and say, yes, it's real, you can use this. And then, you know, I'll help their case managers help the client try to figure out which documents they need, how they qualify. So my recommendation is to start where you're at. If you work in a library, if you have like an after-school program with students in it, just tell them about this service. And then it's a really easy way for people to believe in ACP and use it right away. Another practical thing you can do is help them gather their documents. As someone who works with people internally in my organization and with all Philadelphians who call 211 or a hotline, I've noticed that it's kind of a longer process helping people who are just calling us like out of the blue because they don't have all of their documents in line. So if you can help them gather their documents to sign up for the process, I think it'll be a lot easier and smoother for everyone. That way they could utilize the $30 credit as soon as possible. Another practical thing is help them create an Xfinity ID if they don't already have one, or help them recover their account. And I'm talking a lot about Comcast here because PHLConnectED is using Internet Essentials, but this is also true for Verizon. But if you create an Xfinity ID with them, they could apply the approved application ID number from the National Verifier online. And the online application is a lot easier than calling the ACP Internet Essentials department, because sometimes things could be lost in translation. They could mishear the way you spell your name, and because of that, you may be rejected for ACP in the third step when you have to utilize the ACP credit. And of course, you could help them sign up when you're with them, or you could refer them to 211 so that they can be screened and assigned to the 3 digital navigator orgs that you saw in the beginning, which are SEAMAAC, Beyond Literacy, and Drexel. So there are a lot of different ways to help the people you're working with sign up, a lot of different means, so use them. Lastly, I'm happy to do an ACP workshop and enrollment session with you guys at your organization, so you can email me here. Last week, I went to Southwark, a school in Philadelphia, and there were a lot of parents there, and we already helped 4 people get new internet service. So everything's working out pretty well. Here are the resources. You don't have to write these down. We'll send these to you in the email, but there's the online application for Xfinity, or you could call the ACP department. And for Verizon, they have a general customer service number. If your client has Verizon, they could also use ACP. And if you don't see your internet service provider, my tip is to just type in the ISP's name and ACP to see if they participate. That's pretty much it. If you have any questions, you can email me directly, or if you want to have a workshop, you could also email me for that. Thank you.
Thanks, Cassandra. That's really great. I had a couple of questions I wanted to follow up on from your presentation. The first one is, 211 has shifted to scheduling appointments, and that happened relatively recently, I think in March. I was wondering if you could just share what that looks like from your end as a digital navigator when you get a call referred from 211. What does that process look like for you, and how do you kind of connect with folks that are coming in through 211?
Sure. So I think so far at SEAMAAC, things are going pretty smoothly. It's still the beginning, so we're learning, but we have an online portal that digital navigators use, and then the 211 person will schedule a client. And so there will be a calendar, and we'll just see a person's name in the scheduler, and we have their phone number and what they need help with. And now there's a way to notate whether it's an in-person appointment or if it's a phone call. And it's been going pretty well. It helps facilitate getting the person connected to a digital navigator org, because sometimes, we have our own call lines, but sometimes we're busy working with clients or working with stuff within our organizations that we don't have time to answer the phone. So it's nice to have someone schedule for us. And each digital navigator org has different hours and times that they're available. So yeah, my recommendation is to just have your client call 211, and 211 will help them. If they want to go to an org right away, regardless of how far it is, they can go. But if they don't mind waiting to go to one that's near them, for instance, if they're in South Philly and they want to come to SEAMAAC, they can come here. So it's been going pretty smoothly so far.
That's great. Yeah, United Way has invested a lot in 211 recently and are continuing to do so. So it's really cool to hear that this kind of frictionless, referral system seems to be working pretty well. And I think, getting the word out about 211 has been really, really important through this. I was also wondering if you had any sort of typical experiences, challenges, anything that you could tell us about in terms of maybe like an example of somebody that comes in looking to sign up for ACP, and what some of your common experiences are. Now that you've taken us very helpfully through some of these, there are obstacles that we don't expect, and a lot of things that we're maybe not even thinking about in terms of maintaining service. Do you have any sort of like typical like stories about folks coming in and getting signed up and what that looks like?
Yeah, I think something that happens a lot with our families that we work with is there may already be service. I'm going to speak specifically about Comcast because a lot of our clients have Comcast internet, and for other reasons, yeah, I'll just talk about Comcast. So we'll sign them up for Comcast internet, but it says online, oh, there's already service here. So what do? We have to call them or submit an escalation form that like this person wants to have service here, and the reason that they can't is because the previous tenant forgot to cancel their service. So we would ask the client for their lease documents or utility bill with their name and then submit it to Comcast. And after that, after submitting the escalation form or calling them, the service should be made available on the website. So you could just sign them up easily after that. There are more complicated situations like if it's two people living in one household and Comcast or perhaps Verizon as well, they only allow like one service to be opened at a time at a single address. So in those cases, it's like more case by case basis. It may be better for the person who already has Internet Essentials or whatever Xfinity service to keep that open, or like give the second family who lives there a hotspot. Or if the two families know each other well, we could look into getting them a Wi-Fi extender. So there are a lot of options. It depends on like what makes the most sense, what's the most cost effective, and yeah, that does happen sometimes.
Could you speak at all to the device subsidy component of ACP? I know Ashley mentioned that before. Do you have any experience with that aspect of it, of getting the subsidy for the device?
Mm-hmm. So I've actually never helped someone sign up for the $100 discount before, but I know PCs for People, which is a program that people can sign up for if they qualify for through low income or any other public benefits. I saw on their website you could use the $100 subsidy if you get Wi-Fi through them. So their Wi-Fi service is like $15 per month, but free with ACP. And then you could use the $100 subsidy if you have the $15 ACP Wi-Fi with them. So I've actually never used the $100 subsidy, but I will say that some recommendations, if the person has Internet Essentials, they're eligible for the $150 laptop that's on their website, the Internet Essentials low-cost laptops. There's a Chromebook and a Dell computer. However, they could also get a $100 to $175 laptop from PCs for People if they qualify for public benefits. But honestly, if you go on Target, Best Buy, Walmart, and like type in laptops and then toggle the price to like 100 to 150, you could find some good deals. And I've done that for a lot of people already. And the great thing about that is you don't have to qualify for a public benefit to get a low-cost laptop. So that works very well for people who aren't citizens and don't qualify for public benefits anyway. So especially if there's like a holiday going on, you should look on those websites.
Memorial Day is coming right up, so it's a
yeah,
time to look.
exactly.
That's great. I wanted to quickly just show folks on the webinar now and maybe create some screenshots for when I share this video out of some of the national resources that folks are using to help sort of navigate ACP. So getacp.org is kind of a one-stop shop for finding a lot of resources around ACP. All developed by the Education Superhighway. They also have a certification program called Learn ACP, which is a free tutorial program that you can do and get certified to do ACP signups. I've taken the training. It's really good. I recommend everybody take it, especially if you've been involved in the different iterations of what is now called ACP. Things have shifted slightly over time. And so, getting the most up-to-date refresher on how this is working right now can be really useful. I did it. It took a little under an hour. So it's pretty similar to other kinds of, workplace trainings that you might do. And you'll also get a lot of good resources from that. If you're just interested in some of those resources, I'm going to share out the communication documents from both OIT and from the Education Superhighway here, which just have some general resources available around understanding how ACP works, understanding some of the ins and outs of signing up and things that you might run into. Also, a lot of good stuff on developing or rather understanding different broadband speeds and what folks are looking for when they sign up. This is for folks that are doing individual signups solo, right, without the help of somebody like a digital navigator. But I hope that one of the big takeaways from today is that when you do hit those problems, 211 is this really invaluable resource to get connected with somebody like Cassandra, who is totally brilliant and an expert in this field and helping lots of people get connected. All right, any questions that anybody has? I know we had a question earlier about returns, I think, about returning hotspots and other equipment, if there's any process around that for folks that choose not to extend service.
Yep, thanks, David. I responded, and with Comcast equipment, it'll depend. And so I can't necessarily give a blanket statement, but if somebody wants to, change their service, cancel their service, it might depend based on, whether they're renting, owning that equipment, if they're in a bundle potentially. So that will depend, but we do want folks to maintain their service. And so we want folks to be able to have that for free, continued for free. And so, our hope is that folks make whatever decisions best support them. It certainly is easier to maintain your service with Comcast if you have it, apply the ACP credit if you're eligible. So with hotspots, however, we will not be collecting that equipment, those devices. Those will simply turn off. So no need to, worry about collecting those or having a return process for those.
Great. We had a question about anybody doing local distribution of the PC for People computers. And the quote is that lots of our neighborhood have issues with packages growing feet. Yeah, is there any local distribution that folks, and if you're on the call and you have any resources you want to share with us, you can use the chat for that too. Any thoughts about local distribution?
I can speak on the PCs for People partnership. I linked just above that question the city's announcement of this new partnership. So we are partnering with PCs for People to specifically increase that supply of devices in Philadelphia. These are recycled, refurbished devices that are being distributed at low cost for residents. There will be a physical storefront in Philadelphia soon. And so stay tuned. We'll probably, make that announcement on the TLC listserv. So yes, folks will be able to go in person to pick up rather than having something delivered to them.
Great. And I see a hand raised.
Hi, I'm so sorry. I joined late a little bit today. I'm sorry that I've missed it, but I work with a lot of English language learners, so it's very hard for us to explain the whole process and ask them to do it independently. Is there anybody who can help them to fill out the forms and everything, for example?
Yeah, Cassandra, do you want to talk a little bit about how you've dealt with that in your work?
Yeah. So to address your answer directly, if you have any clients who live in South Philly or don't mind traveling, they could always come to SEAMAAC on Mondays and Wednesdays, which is when our digital lab is open for people who need in-person assistance. However, not just SEAMAAC offers interpretation assistance. Beyond Literacy and Drexel do as well. We all have access to language line interpreters, but my recommendation for you is if you are working with a client, then you could just, I don't know if you have access to language line, but if you're working in your native language, in their native language, you could just help them through the process and translate everything that you see, you know, pretty much kind of like how you would walk your parent through an application that you're helping them sign up for.
Okay, thank you so much.
Of course.
Great. Any other questions from folks? I did want to point out that Ashley shared in the chat the link to the school district's materials around getting those letters printed, because there are some really specific requirements for those. But OIT and the school district have done really great work in getting those available for folks. And so I will share those in the follow-up email for this. So all those resources are available for folks. Any other specific questions about ACP, about the transition? Other questions about the work? Oh, go ahead, Ashley.
Not a question, obviously, but I wanted folks to be aware that the digital navigators are phone banking families, actively phone banking families, charters that have opted in, and soon our district households. And so if you are working directly with a family that is currently enrolled in PHLConnectED, you can let them know that they should be receiving outreach. Comcast is doing a lot of outreach, including texts and direct mailers, email as well. So there are lots of different touch points that families should be receiving or should expect to receive. And so in your conversation with families, you can let them know, hey, or you could ask, hey, did you receive this, email from the school district? Did you receive a call from Comcast or a digital navigator? These things are all very active right now and will continue to be active even after the transition date of July 31st. So that might be a good sort of segue into that conversation, because we also know that sometimes, families are not quite sure what PHLConnectED is. Maybe they know they have Comcast, but they don't know that name PHLConnectED. So just sharing that for awareness is a good conversation starter.
That's great. Yeah, it's a good reminder that the deadline for a seamless transition is the end of July. But ACP is an ongoing benefit that's available. It's available through the next year with some thought that it's going to be continued. And so this could be an ongoing benefit. TLC will keep you updated as to its status as we know about it. We're hoping it gets extended indefinitely, but we don't know yet. Great. Any other questions or comments before we go today?
I wanted to highlight one point
Yeah.
about the IDs. So when you are submitting the ID, or when the client is submitting the ID, they don't have to be US based. So they could be passports from their native government. And they could be birth certificates, not in English. I just want to highlight that because a lot of people are worried they don't have a driver's license, or I don't have a Philly ID. Can I still use ACP? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
So
that's great. Yeah, thank you. And I think for folks that have those kinds of specific questions, I really encourage you to take the education superhighway training. I found it more valuable to actually go through the physical training than to try to look for some specific questions I had through a frequently asked questions. It's laid out really simply, and like I said, it takes under an hour to do. That was one of the things that I learned that I wrote down that I said tried to remember to share. Another question. How about if the family is living with another family and do not have any lease or bills in their name? That's a good question.
So how I would approach this is I would see if the other family they're living with has the lease in their name and has a child going to the school district. If they do, then everyone in that household could benefit from ACP internet service. And of course, because there are multiple people living in the household, you want to consider what the speed is that they should get. So they could do Verizon or Comcast, the full performance internet, which are speeds over 100, because Internet Essentials Plus is covered by ACP, but it's only 100 speed. If that's not the case, if they don't want to share internet with the other family, then I think it would be best to give the family a hotspot. Would you say so, Ashley?
I think that sounds right. Follow-up question about the person they're living with does not have children, for example, a grandparent. ACP is for any qualifying household. You do not have to have a school-age child in your household. So lots of Philadelphians are eligible, not just our school-aged households.
Yeah, so you could also see if they have SNAP, Medicaid, SSI, other public benefits, or if they could qualify through being 200% at or below the federal poverty guidelines. So there are a lot of means that someone could be approved for ACP. I would just suggest that you go through all of them to see if the family qualifies for ACP.
Yeah, and the verifier is good for going through that step-by-step process. Yeah. Great. Any other questions before we go today? It's been a great session. I hope everybody's getting a lot of information they need. All these videos are going to be available, including excerpted clips of some of the key information. We'll share those out through social media tomorrow. And I will share in a follow-up email to everybody on this call and anybody that is signed up for the TLC listserv, which I highly recommend that you join if you're not on it. I'll have the breakdown of the whole session with all of the resources that we shared here today. So if you forgot a link or can't find something in the chat, don't worry about it because it will all be in an email that you'll receive by tomorrow. If there's any no final questions, which I'll give just a second, if anybody has any last questions before we go today. Yeah, I just would like to say thank you to everyone. This is a really great session. I'm really glad we could share this information, which is very timely, right? Those deadlines are coming up. And yeah, share some of the really great work that our digital navigators and the Office of Innovation and Technology are doing in the city.